morning. Thanks for coming in so early. This is Watch Dogs Hacking It to 11. Thanks everybody for coming over, and we're really grateful that GDC had us and allowed us to come and do this talk for you guys. We did Watch Dogs, and we shipped it about a year ago, and we're really glad we can talk to you about a bit more about the music system and everything that's music in the game and how that came about for the game. I'm Olivier Girard. I'm the audio director on the project, and
I'm Pavel Maximytchev, and I'm the audio designer and the composer for the game.
So essentially, we wanted to do a talk that covered the whole aspect of audio on Watch Dogs, and we started writing it, and we figured that was way too much stuff to talk about. So we decided, we figured we'll stick to music, which is what proved to be the most challenging thing for us, as we had to reconcile all the open world with our own creative objectives. We're going to get to in about a second. What we knew from the get-go, we got on Watch Dogs just when we finished Splinter Cell Conviction about 5.5 years ago, and all we knew at the time Watch Dogs was becoming its own thing, was we were establishing a new brand, and all we knew was a serious tone, open world game focused on hacking and the concern raised by technology and all that. So serious tone was basically all we got, as a major direction from the game, and that's going to be reflected throughout the whole presentation because that's the one thing we kept grabbing onto. We want to do a serious tone thing. Obviously, doing open world games with a lot of driving and shooting, there's a lot of other games happening at the same time, and some are humorous, some are goofy and all that, and I think that was our way of trying to be different. It was trying to stick to that serious tone. It was a long development cycle, and it was the first time for us to actually be part of a pre-production phase. I'd been at Ubi for a while, and I'd done a lot of crunches, a lot of production phases, but never in pre-production. So that was a bit uneasy at first, getting into that rhythm of not actually always wrestling with tasks and all that to be doing, but having deeper thoughts about the whole creative direction and the sound direction of the game. Also, it was a very large team. I was used to working with 5-6 people maximum on a project, and then we got on Watch Dogs, and eventually we were this team working just in Montreal, and we had other friends as well working in the Paris studios. We had friends in Newcastle, and we had people in Quebec City, all working on sound. And I think the guys at the Star Control talk said it best yesterday. They said, they embraced standing on the shoulder of giants, of other people, and that's pretty much what we're doing here. I mean, we get to be here today because all these people worked really hard on the game, and we wouldn't be here without them if we needed that many people just to ship the game in the state we wanted it to be. So we're really grateful about that, and also the relationship we had with our creative director, Jonathan Morin, and our producer, Dominique Gay, who really enabled us to achieve our goals and really reach as far as we could with this brand new IP. So we're really grateful about that as well. So as I said a bit, the audio direction, it wasn't like we came on board the project 5.5 years ago and said, oh, this is what it's going to be. It was there was a lot of iterations, obviously, because the game was finding itself. We were trying to define what we were going to be, and we were trying to get in sync with what the creative direction was doing, what the game designers were doing, and all that. But what was really, really important for us on Watch Dogs, and another thing we're really grateful about, is we had full control and full authority over sound. So it might not be so obvious when you don't have it, but to get that on a project is really important because we get to push our ideas and then we get to sell them to the creative director, and they can buy in or not into this, but at least it comes from us. It's a bottoms-up perspective on things, whereas other times you'll be on a different project and the creative vision is going to be so strong that you'll become a service to that creative vision. On Watch Dogs, we really were given a lot of room to define ourselves, what we wanted this game to be about from an audio perspective, and that really helped us define exactly what Watch Dogs was about. And what it was about, basically, as I said, we were just coming off of Splinter Cell Conviction, and we'd done a lot of interactive music, but also music that reacted really closely to what the action was. And we really, really enjoyed doing that with the systems for Splinter Cell. And we decided, now we're doing an open world game, so in theory, this wouldn't be the best approach, but we decided to challenge ourselves a bit and say, how can we make the most tailor-made music for all these moments the player is going to live, but still try to make it work with the total freedom promise of the open world. So that was basically the challenge we put ourselves through because we really, really enjoy those moments. And we said, this is the best way to get the maximum emotional impact of the game is to support these moments with as close a soundtrack as we can have that reacts to what the player is actually doing. So if we realize that the player is taking a car and crashing through windows, then can we find a way to note that, and can we see that, and can we support the music? Can the music support those actions to the player? I'm not saying this is what we did in the end, but that was our reasoning from the beginning. This is what we were trying to achieve. Minimal systems and more mission-based custom tracks. Obviously, we couldn't get too far away from systems because the open world still demanded a lot of feedback and still demanded a lot of attention because gameplay was kind of king on Watch Dogs, and we wanted to be sure that the gameplay was getting all the feedbacks it needed. And a lot of times, a lot of what was happening in the game, like the vigilante system and all that, was very subtle. And since our character didn't necessarily have a spider sense tingling or whatnot, oftentimes the solution to those problems, how to bring the player's attention to something that's going on very far away down the street, was to change the music or have a specific cue play at a specific time, or when the police were chasing you and all that. So a lot of the times, we did need those systems to be there just so we could have the proper gameplay feedback for the player. So obviously that created a few conflicts in the game, and how we resolve them is pretty much the meat and potatoes of this talk. So reconciling all these systems. Obviously there was technical concerns as well because we couldn't have 11 streams of music playing all at the same time. Technically, we would have gotten a lot of angry engine programmers at our desk if we had attempted that. And also, we were doing a cross-gen game, which implied that, however far we would push with the next-gen technology, the current-gen guys would hate us that much more. So we still wanted to be friends with them. So, we try to find a common ground that everybody was happy with what we were doing. But also, from a technical perspective, there's just so many stuff you can cram at the same time through the streams. We had a lot of readability concerns as well because we could have a guy with a boombox, and then you're in your car with your own radio, and then there's mission music playing on top, and that just creates a mess of music, really. And if you have music everywhere, then you get to the next point, which is a density concern. If you got music playing all the time, the next time it comes in, it kind of loses its impact a bit. So we wanted to be sure that there's also some times where there's no music, or the player can choose to have no music, so when it comes back in, then it actually means something. And also, the open world promise, obviously, was the main thing that we always had to keep in mind, because every time we thought we had a good idea, suddenly we switched our brain to QA mode. We're like, so what happens if the player decides to take an ambulance and drive backwards through the store as people are calling the police? Is that still going to work? And most often, that answer would be no, and we would have to find another solution. But that's everything, that's setting the table for the project for the next 4 years we had to do. And the first casualty of that was the Muse ambient system. When we started thinking about Watch Dogs, we knew it was a serious game, and we knew it was an open world, so we started thinking about our favorite references. Yep. And one that came up was obviously Fallout. And so we played a lot of Fallout, and we're like, oh wow, this game really nails selling the Fallout universe through music and through those small musical cues that come in and out of the environment. They're not pieces, they're just small musical phrases that come in and out. I'm like, this is brilliant, let's try that. So we had our composer make a bunch of these things, and we had a bunch of them for every act of the game, and we were super happy with the system. And then it hit us once everything was in place that a dense, living Chicago is not the same audio landscape at all as the wasteland. So there's much less room in the mix for these small, subtle things to come in. And obviously, we reached that density concern as well, where there was always some kind of music playing at the same time. So we said, all right, let's take all these very expensive things we bought and put them aside for now, and see if we can do something else with them later on. So we learned a hard lesson right there. This is an example of these small musical phrases we had. really the objective there was really let's sell the flavor of the game. Let's say this is Watch Dogs, this is new, this is a serious game. So hopefully that's what you got from this small piece, but that was the direction we were going for. Obviously, conflicts, many systems trying to fight at the same time, and we had to make sure all those systems existed together and the system was smart enough to realize when there should be a transition. So what you see here is our glorious music tree, which was made by our programmers in Montreal, which basically looks at the game and sees, well, what part of the game am I in? Is this the first act? Is this the later act of the game? Maybe what district am I in? Or am I in a mission? Am I not in a mission? Is the police chasing me? Is there a vigilante event going on? And there's a whole bunch of priorities within all those systems. And this is basically the overall, I'd say, music system. Because once you get into an actual mission of the game, then this is kind of overruled. And then the missions actually take over, and they have their own music conditions that are set through scripts. So let's say a mission had you, obviously, let's say, pick apples, because that's very Watch Dogs. But let's say a mission had you pick apples in an orchard, then maybe we would try to hook ourselves up to the amount of apple in your basket, and then the music would fluctuate around that. So that was the main objective. And every mission had different objectives, so we would try to find the objective of the mission and make sure that the actual scripts reacted to that. But when you were not in the mission, and all the other systems were trying to play the music, whether it be the source diegetic music, whether it was the in-car music, all that had to go through the music tree, and then the music tree would decide, okay, now we can play this, now we can play that. So this is a bit of a closer look to it. Obviously, it's very programmer-friendly. We weren't working too much in there. We were just sitting down with our programmers and telling them what we wanted, and they made this. I captured it because I think it's really impressive, but I wouldn't be able to remake it myself. And so, obviously, now this is the theory behind it, and here, what we decided to do as well is, what we were doing on Splinter Cell actually was, the music was interactive and working on a layer system, which would have different layers coming in and out depending on the action on screen. And we wanted to work with parts for our music so we could have a better impact at any given moment. So how parts work, Pavel can explain a bit more. He's more musically minded.
Right now or later?
Yeah, no, right now.
Okay, sure. But the thing is that with parts it's very economical memory-wise, processing-wise. It's a perfect solution for us. I mean, so basically we constructed a piece, chopped it up, and then we can reuse the parts accordingly. But the best concern, well, I mean, the most concerning problem was really the memory constraints. Because if we have a 3-minute piece times 8 layers, 3 minutes, takes a certain charge on the processor and the memory. So
exactly. So basically, the themes, we're calling them because that's how our system called them. Basically, the themes were being shuffled around depending on the action on screen. So that's what you're going to see here in this example. And basically, you see everything that's happening in the game, and you'll see the system react to what was happening. And the theme thing is that since it's working in parts, sometimes it's going to wait until the end of a part to switch over to the next part. So that's why sometimes you'll see there's a bit of maybe a bit of a delay between the actual action and when the music reacts to it. But when it does, it's not just a new layer fading in. It's really there's an impact there. There's a better. There's a bit of editing going on for time's sake.
Yo, I got a message.
Yo.
Your ass don't believe fat meat green.
Watch all units, initiating CTOS scan for suspect. All units, CTOS scan completed. Suspect location is being distributed now. We've got a patrol car in pursuit of suspect.
Damn, where did he go? Squad suspect back in view. We're on him.
Track location and report back. Over. Copy that. A patrol car is en route to the suspect.
Squad, please grant us COS access. Squad 938 Charlie here. We're headed back to the station.
So this wasn't a mission. This was all through the systemic
the controversial
aspect of
re-election
the
of
game.
Mayor
So
Rushmore
that was the
continues.
main
Insiders are
music
saying it was
system
his
driving what you
decision to
hear and what you
implement
see on
the
screen right
smart
now. Some may have noticed during the gunfight when the police are actually firing at you, we cut out all the music, and that was a conscious decision on our part because we had this mandate to make the gunfights feel impactful and feel important and be really something very important for Watch Dogs. So we watched we watched a lot of Heat, Michael Mann's movie, and we dissected it and like, okay, so what makes this work? And we realized a lot of what made it work was that basically the guns were the music in those scenes. There was no actual score on top of the big shootouts in Heat. And so let's try that and try to bring up the guns and the bullet impacts and the pass-bys and everything once there's a gunfight. Also, it says, the music goes away once the player is fired at, because we also didn't want the player to be able to just shut off the music by shooting his gun in the air, because that would have been a bit too obvious. So you have to be fired at, and then the music goes away, and then there's a cooldown period, and if nobody shoots at you again, then the music will start back again. Our composer for Watch Dogs is whom we worked with first was Brian Reitzel, and it was a really great experience. Brian worked on a lot of Sofia Coppola movies. He did the Hannibal series. He did Boss, set in Chicago as well. It was a great experience for us working with him, and it was really interesting how we came about working with him, because when we started Watch Dogs, we had this very clear vision of what we actually wanted. It was like, oh, it's going to be very film noir music with a lot of brass, and we were super excited about our direction. And we sent out kind of a pitch request from composers, and we got, and it was so precise, and we were so very determined about what we wanted, and very precise about what we wanted, that what we got back was 20 times the same thing. Like, yeah, maybe we gave too precise the definitions of what we wanted. So basically we took those pitches, and there was a lot of good ones in there, and we got that through our creative director, and he said, what do you mean film noir and brass? We don't want that. I'm like, oh, okay. So there was a bit of a disconnect there between us and the creative director, and so we decided let's go with an ambient approach and a more of a electronic approach, ambient, to Watch Dogs, and we took a bunch of stuff from Brian Reitzel and just put it to the images of the game. We're like, this works, this sticks. So we contacted him, and that's how we started working together. And it was a fun experience, but since Watch Dogs was such a long project, obviously there was an evolving scope to the project. So what we decided that we were going to get from the beginning that didn't necessarily fit the scope of the game in the end, and that's how we had to be a bit more creative down the line. And the final gameplay needs often for the game, as I explained earlier with the Muse ambiances, there were no need for that in the end. But then once you've bought those things, you're kind of stuck with them and your budget has been spent. So, there was a lot of good learnings for us in terms of, how to deal with composers and how to, especially when to buy music from the composer. It was a lot of fun learning those lessons. Here is, Brian worked a lot on the cinematics for us. And he did a wonderful work, and this is my favorite cinematic for the game. So this is an example of Brian Reitzel's work on Watch Dogs, which I think really nails the emotional impact the music can have in the game with the very specific Watch Dogs flavor he set.
I followed you because I idolized you, like Jackson does. And I kept hoping that you want me around, but eventually, I just hoped that you would look back.
All I can say is I'm sorry.
I'm not following you anymore.
I know.
All right, sweetie. We're leaving now. Say goodbye to your Uncle Aiden.
Are you coming with us?
No. Your uncle's staying here.
Bye, Jax.
We got a lot of amazing stuff from this collaboration, and we're really grateful we got to work with Brian on this. Now is Pavel's time to take over.
Absolutely. So I would like to go a little bit more in depth on the technical side and a little bit more musical side of this thing. So basically, the first time we got to work on the music concepts for Watch Dogs was around the first E3 we presented back in 2012. We got a lot of stuff from Brian. It was all actually fit perfectly, but as the demo progressed through the iterations, we noticed that there was some lack in certain key moments. We lacked musical cues. So we decided to give it a shot, and the really first integration of music from our part into the Watch Dogs game was the club scene in the E3 demo. So basically, Aiden had to go through a club, a private club, and we needed music to be played in the club. So Olivier and Dave, our audio artist, went through a lot of tracks, commercials and commercial tracks and everything, and nothing really fitted the mood we wanted to create. So, and at a certain point, Dave said, "Well, look, I can handle it. Let's try it out." So he composed the track. We put it in. And people loved it, yeah. So
it was kind of a stealth thing as well for a AAA Ubisoft game. It's not something we asked if we could do. We just, like we were iterating, trying to find the proper track. But it wasn't something that we kind of did usually, compose on the floor in-house. But eventually we were just like, all right, this really works. But we never really said where it was coming from. We just put it in. And then once we got the, very good reaction from E3, and then I, as a producer, said, what does editorial think? And I was like, oh, they really like it. I was like, oh. Well, that got us thinking about what opportunities this was opening up for us.
Absolutely, and people loved it on YouTube. They made remixes of that track, so we said, all right, we might be onto something. So since we wanted to be really precise about the musical intentions, the integration of music in Watch Dogs, that fitted our kind of musical ambitions, because we want to make music for very specific moments to work within the systems. We're tightly scripted for the missions, and since we work with people in the engine and tools and animation everywhere, we know how things are hooked up in the game. So for us, it was much easier to just be part of the team and iterate with the team. As the team made progress, we were right there. So that added tremendous flexibility on our part. So I mean, we knew up front what was coming in the next version of the demo. Sorry. Right there. So for the in-house production, we were working with 3 people. There were Dave Christian, the gentleman on your right, Peter Connolly on the bottom, and myself. So that 3 of us, we have really different musical backgrounds and history. So Dave is a mostly film composer and electronic musician for the past 25 years. Peter Connolly is a hired gun. He's very versatile. He can do almost everything. And I'm mostly rooted in rock and jazz, with a bit of classical music also. So with those flavors, we always try to mix and match, because Brian Reitzel gave us the first kind of vision of what Watch Dogs should be. And then we kind of tried to follow his lead, but bringing our own background. And I think what it provided us, because we wrote a lot of music for Watch Dogs. I mean, with the DLC, we up to 4 hours of music.
I think 4 hours of in-house composed music. So
yeah,
if we wanted to be so close to the actual mission, sometimes we were so close to the mission, once that mission was done, we couldn't necessarily reuse that track for anything else. So we had to make custom-made tracks for a lot of the missions.
Always, yeah. And we wanted that. I mean, it wasn't a constraint, basically. So me and Dave, we work with Sonar and in our mixing studios, little mixing studios, and I mean, and we brought in our own musical instruments. You know, Dave works with the modular synths. I work mostly with guitar and amplifiers and effects. And it gave us really a more diverse approach. So instead of being redundant, we always kind of spiced it up a little bit with different things. This is how we can schematically represent how we treated the music, interactive music in Watch Dogs. So basically, going from left to right, you can see we subdivided always in musical measures, basically in bars. So we got always starting with with intro, usually 4 bars, skipping to 4 bars, and then we got a little that F1 thing. This is what we call the filler. So a filler is basically a really short musical idea. It could be rhythmic, it could be melodic, but it has to be really short, 1 bar or less. What it was supposed to achieve is that you will go through intro 1 into intro 2, a little development, and then it will loop on the filler 1, waiting for a trigger from inside the game to be sent to the musical engine. So basically, since it was so short and looping so fast upon itself, we can trigger something really fast, and there will be almost no lag between the event that was sent from the game engine and the music reacting, switching to the main thing. Then again, 4 bars, let's say, for the first main pass, going into M2, M3, M4, and M5, which are shorter sections of the main one with a little development, perhaps, and that allows to be responsive for the input from the game engine. If the player accomplished something, boom, we can chop at let's say M3 and skip to main 6 right away without going through M4 and M5, and also it's much more reactive. And then usually we had, after the whole main 6, which is usually a big development with themes, so we didn't want to cut it up, so we can proceed with a more melodic development. Then we will go into filler 2 and wait for the outro, usually a little punch or a cinematic or something like that. So this is in a nutshell how it works. The main consideration for my part was establish themes for the main characters in Watch Dogs. This is things I prefer to do because, I mean, it creates a certain identity to the game. People can recognize the characters by the themes, and it creates a lot of interesting small ideas you can reuse elsewhere in the game and create identity. Because over 4 hours of music, I mean, I personally want to create identity. So if a person randomly listens to whatever track on the internet and says, "Oh, I heard it in Watch Dogs," and this was my goal. So this is the really small redux of the main theme for Aiden/Watch Dogs. This is only an example on the piano solo. It's real simple stuff, and so it could be easily reusable, but I will speak about it a little later. Here's a development of that theme, a bit more fleshed out. This is from DLC, so we incorporated DLC theme in it, mixing them together, so it's always useful to have themes in game, I think. So let's see how it works. So this is one of the aspects of themes we use, melodical themes. Also, I think always in the thematical approach, usage of clear instruments associated to each character. This is my approach. For Clara, which is the sidekick of Aiden throughout the game, I wrote a little theme for her with the usage of clarinet. But since the Watch Dogs is all about hacking and digital error and glitch and all that, so I tried to, real little things. I just processed the clarinet to make it a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more distorted. So here's how it sounds. This is the regular clarinet. And here's the treated version. So there's a little distortion, a little delay, and it sometimes, since the delay catches the distortion, it kind of clashes with the following notes. It's a real subtle trick. Also, within the range of the recognizable sounds, we used a lot of synths, of course, since it's Watch Dogs. And one of the main patches we used was this one, which we used throughout the main game and the DLC. It sounds like this. So it's really, I like that patch a lot because it creates a rhythmical movement right away. Plus, it sounds really dystopian, kind of.
There's a small example of all that coming together in one of the scenes, in the early scenes of the game, where you actually get to meet Clara. So you're going to hear a bit of everything, and it's we tried to tag what was going on at the top of the screen, but basically it's just all these techniques coming together in this small clip.
Yeah.
Bad Boy 17?
Clara.
Clara. You don't look 17.
Do I look like a bad boy?
No, you look like a wild card.
I hope I don't frighten you.
What, do you have a reason to frighten me?
Now you're being paranoid.
Am I? Someone is fucking with my life. threatening my family, and at the same moment, the mysterious bad boy wants to meet me, and he is a she. He is a lie. Listen, I need to trust you, Clara.
I wouldn't trust me if I were you. But here's a reason to listen. The text message you sent me. I know where to find him.
Yeah, well, we don't need to meet face-to-face for that.
No. We needed a face-to-face for this.
By the way, this wasn't the final mix of the game. When we were preparing these clips, we did a version with the music mixed up just a bit, so it became more clear when we were presenting them.
Absolutely, yes. Another thing I'm really fond of is to bring new stuff in the soundtrack, something nobody else can have, right? Something really unique to the project. And I'm really a do-it-yourself guy. So a couple of years ago, I built a guitar, which looks like this. Whoops. Sorry. It's a fretless, a real technical mishap. It's a fretless baritone guitar. I was saving it for a little special project, and Watch Dogs was the one. So it's kind of, it's a guitar, but I mean, when you hear it, it creates a really specific palette of sounds, and it's a very nice, useful tool to have, and it creates a musical imprint, something you can easily recognizable as being part of Watch Dogs, again, being part of the hacking and all that. So this is an example of that guitar being used. Example from Bad Blood, which is the DLC for the game. But of course, all that is nice, but when you have to compose for an interactive project or interactive music system, you always have to be composing with constraints within constraints. And I really like to approach composing backwards, kind of. So I start with the main thing, with the main theme, and incorporate it into the game and see how it fits. What are the main challenges? What could cut it? Basically, what's the worst that could happen within the usage of that music? And then I try to compose so I start with the main thing and go back to the intro or to the ending, and starting with the main course. So it helps a lot to really tailor-make the music. So basically, you know how many bars you will need to fill that gap and all that, so it really helps a lot. Another little trick I would like to share with you, this is personal observation, is for me it's what I call the piano validation. Is me as a guitarist, I mean, I always try to compose with guitars and all that, but sometimes you find that cool riff that really sounds amazing with the distortion and effects, and you're really grooving and all that. And then you try to establish more of the harmonic content, and you notice that your riff is really charged, and it's too many things going on at the same time, and you kind of find yourself squeezed, and you kind of abandon the idea. So what I really like to do is to find whatever riff on the synth sequence or guitar or whatever, and then reproduce it on the piano, clean piano sound, and see if it works. If it works, I can proceed. I know that harmonically it will be stable, and I can elaborate on that. But it's really just bringing to the simplest expression of the music through the piano and see if it works. And if it does, you can proceed. It will avoid a lot of death traps from the music point of view. Yeah, so going a little bit more, a little deeper into the harmony aspect of Watch Dogs production. Here's the few examples I prepared for you. So the first example, the first point is keeping the harmony really simple. This is, I cannot stress it enough. Well, this is for my behalf. I think it works better, especially within the Watch Dogs. And here's the example itself. This is the Watch Dog theme.
A little bit of a performance going on here, so we can really stretch out how it works. And Pavel's going to take you through it.
Yeah. Sorry. So here's the chords, right, for the progression. It goes through, starts, well, another thing, while I'm at it, is for the whole Watch Dogs, I always tried to keep everything in the same key. So we chose C minor as the key, the dominant key for the whole game. And there's a lot of advantages. It's really simple. And the main advantage is that you can mix and match different systems, and they all will kind of fall within themselves. Because, right, you start, let's say, a vigilante event in the game, then suddenly something else happens in the systemic world, boom, you trigger a felony. But if your musical cues are in the same key, the transition will be much smoother through it's kind of really basic, but I wanted to stress it out. So back to the Watch Dogs theme, it really goes like, right, C minor, back to A minor. This little trick, progression in thirds, minor thirds, is reused throughout the game. I mean, every cue almost that I did had this incorporated in some way. Because I think it's one, again, we're going back to the theme approach for the game, and I think it's really part of it. And this creates a kind of mysterious sound a little bit. You don't know what to expect because it's two minor chords, not really related tonally. And it goes both ways. You can go lower or sharper to E flat minor. So let me play this little example for you. While it's playing, you can always add, of course, you will need to add a little bass to that thing because it's only so you can stay in C, right? For the whole progression. But I prefer to follow the progression through the root, but I will explain both examples. Let's go. Bass and the rhythm going on, and I will add up for the next playthrough. I will add up the melody so we can hear how it all blends together. And go to F. right there. This is the melody for the whole main theme for the. Oh, okay. It's part to time. Thank you. It's really basic stuff. You see, we always repeat the same, almost 4 notes, 3 notes. This is a part of the main theme, which is that little A flat in there. But since the melody and the theme is so simple, it's really primitive. But while it's being so simple, it's really versatile. You can reuse it everywhere, reuse it through different harmonies, different keys, mix and match. You know, it's really, really fluent. And since it's short, you can reuse it within the context of the interactive music. So it's recognizable, short, and reusable. I mean, you got everything in there. Here's another example, what I call the borrow chords or model interchange. This is the Clara theme. Again, real simple, 4 chords, nothing more. See again this little example I told you about, the C minor, go into E flat minor, kind of little. Let me play it out, this one for you, so you can kind of relate to what it says. Chords. Let's outline them with bass. Again, you can stay on the C root note through the whole thing if you want. But I prefer to follow the chords again with the root notes. Thing going on. There's a lot of chords that are not part of the C minor, E flat minor, nor the F major are not part of the. Actually, the F major could be, but now let's hear the melody. So while being extremely simple, this melody, again, is very repeatable. I mean, it is easily integratable into other themes, and it is interchangeable. There's a few little tricks I prefer when I change chords like this from going, let's say, from C to E flat to F. I prefer to highlight the most, little jazz approach, you know. I mean, you can highlight the most important notes of that chord you're playing above. So basically, you know, in this case, you know, we're going like, let's start at measure 1. You're going on the root of the E flat and, you know, a little diminished passage. And then to go on the F chord, could be, this is straight the notes from the triad of the F chord. And we go into to C minor again. So it's real simple. The chord inversions, another real fast example. Here's another really simple progression. Again, you will recognize that sound, you know, C minor to A minor. Going to F minor and F sus4. What it gives us, you see, the bottom line is always a straight C. So it goes like, let's say, we'll do a little example of that. No, excuse me. So create a little bass line. Let's say this is a synth arpeggio or whatever, you know, it stays in C. It plays throughout your whole song for the whole duration of the song, right? Since we're using the chord inversions in this example, so we're always keeping the C note on the bottom in the root position of the chords. You can reuse any one of those chords in an interchangeable manner, and it will kind of still flow nicely. You know, let's see. I can switch chords. Let's go. Let's start with A minor. Go on to F. Etc., etc. You can do whatever with those chords, and it will kind of still be acceptable to the human ear. But then again, this is Watch Dogs. I mean, the game is all about hacking. The game is all about the glitchiness. So I kind of tried to integrate the theme of glitch into the harmony itself. So sometimes, you know, I mean, the changes we play through, they're not really, how to say that, it's not top 40 material, right? But I mean, within if you use them a lot through the whole soundtrack, the player's ears get used to it. And when sudden changes arrive, I mean, something you didn't expect arrives, it will not surprise the player as much because he already kind of used to the bit sharp and ambiguous quality of those chords.
I think we're going to have to move on soon to the music licensing aspect.
All right.
We're really speeding through this. There's not much time left, I hear. So.
My bad. So we basically use the odd time signatures through game also to create that sense of instability. Again, hacking approach. Here's a blue example. I won't play the whole thing for you, but you know. This is in 7/8. Odd number of measures per musical phrase is another trick we used. So basically to disbalance the musical straightness of the whole thing, right? So basically when the player is used to the subdivisions of 4 measures, we kind of mix it up, make 5 measure progressions, 7 measure progressions, just to mix little things a little bit. So again, when the sudden changes arrive, people are already used to that kind of feel. Common notes throughout progression, we'll quickly see those chords. Again, usage of the minor C minor back to E minor again with transition through B major. I always love to range the chords, so we always keep one common note throughout progression. This, in this case, is a E flat. And by keeping that E flat throughout chords, I mean, you can launch a melodic phrase, let's say the musical theme for Aiden or Watch Dogs, and it will work right on top of any of those chords without any constraints.
We're going to have very quickly an example of in-game music integration where we try to blend all the systems in. So basically in this mission you're about to see, there's a bit of editing going on as well, so for brevity's sake. But what's going on is we go from diegetic music coming from the club, which blends into music inside the club, and then it becomes composed music. That's been made to sound like it's from the club, and then it escalates into a mission music. So you'll see the example here. And this is the type of things we did to try to blend all the systems together and try to reconcile everything in the world. And we're pretty happy how it turned out for this particular mission. Music here was coming from that side. Now there's a different perspective as you're in the lobby.
I hope you enjoy your listening. I am Default. Welcome to my party.
Damn, he's good. Look at that, he's hacked into the profiler system. He's toying with me. Go ahead.
club music to full-on score right there. And eventually through that mission, the music then becomes even more, there's even more parts of that music coming on down the line. When it works well, we didn't invent anything there, but when it works well and we can blend all our systems together, then it really elevates those missions to a higher level, and we're really happy doing that. And we did that a few other times. I'm going to skip one example here we had, which was basically the same idea, where actually diegetic music coming from somewhere in the mission that then becomes the score music for that specific mission. We had a Wu-Tang Clan mission that we called it that had the Wu-Tang Clan song in it that we really liked how it turned out. We had another one in a junkyard with Ministry playing through the speakers, which was really cool as well. And now I want to touch a bit on music licensing just before we're done, because that was a big one for us. It was the first time we had to do that to such an extent in a game and try to get all that music in. And when we started thinking about licensed music, we thought about all the open world games, what they were doing, and the first answer to that is, oh, well, they're doing radios. And we're like, well, radios have been done, and the Watch Dogs flavor is not about radios. It was about your telephone, your PDA, what you've got in your pocket. And we figured, that's how I listen to music in my car. It's my playlist, so we figured we're going to do a playlist for the player that he's able to fill out as he progresses through the game. But our angle on it was that we wanted to be meaningful as well. And we wanted to be sure that that playlist had something to say about the game. And since Chicago was such a big part of Watch Dogs, we decided we're going to make our playlist Chicago-centric. It ended up being about 80% bands and artists from Chicago, and we're quite happy about that. But it's not something that we sold well, I think. It's not something that we communicated enough, because we were really happy with the playlist. I don't think it really necessarily set the world on fire, but if I were to do it again, I'd do the exact same playlist. And we had a lot of help from the whole Ubisoft studio in acquiring those licenses, and we were really happy how it turned out. There was a bit of everything for everyone in it. In the end, the diegetic music existed in the world, and we had to be sure that, for the conflicts, there was always clear rules about what was going to happen. And as I said earlier on, gameplay was king, so we always had to be sure that, when there was important gameplay feedback, diegetic music would go away. And when mission music would come in, diegetic music would go away as well. So that was basically the rule we had, and it ended up working well for us. This is our cutting-edge license management tool at Microsoft Excel. So we kept track of everything in there just to be sure, this is the ones we've cleared, and this is the information. Do we acquire this at the very start of the game? Does it come in later, et cetera, et cetera. So we had this very powerful tool to keep track of everything. As I said, you could, build up your musical playlist as you progress through the game. You could edit it. There was a lot of, hidden information about the playlist, which we thought was really cool. We had artist bios in there if you wanted to learn more about the artists and all that. You could actually hack the music away from the speakers in the world if you didn't already have it in your playlist. We had a Shazam-like app in the game as well, so that was a lot of fun to set up. And the way it was working, the whole licensed music system is every time we had a song playing, we had 3 versions of that track that were pre-processed, and the system would switch between which version of the track should be playing depending on where it was playing from. So this is how it sounded within the different emitters. That's when a vehicle is driving down the street. That's the version you would hear of that track. Coming from the speaker. Rolling like a statue sitting in my office chair. Typing letters for computerized disordering. You listen yourself to your music player. If you're sitting in that car, that's what's going to happen. Those are the very different versions. And we chose that system instead of having real-time processing on the tracks because it was much easier to handle for the current gen guys. So that was the main reasoning behind this technological decision. We also had an additional filter on the music to account for the vehicles and how broken they were. So if you would break the windows, filtering would be different on that very specific version of the track. And to wrap it up very quickly, because I think we're going over time, what we learned about doing Watch Dogs and what we learned doing it, structure and planning is important, but as well, really the relationships you're going to forge with the other people on your team, and especially the other teams, whether it be animation, programming, and all that, those are the ones that are really going to pay off down the line. We bought ourselves a lot of goodwill from the engine team, and that allowed us to do a lot of stuff and work well beyond where we could have been expected to be locked out of the data. So that's really important to keep in mind. Play nice with the other teams. Also, doing in-house music allowed us to reach our our creative objectives missions, which was really have that tailor-made music to the missions. I think we aimed pretty high, and I think for us, we reached our objective as close as we could get it with this project, and we're really happy we got to do it. But it wasn't, there's some tough lessons learned as well. We're still having a hard time reaching polish phase. The music for the last mission came in as we were doing the final pass on the mix of the game. So that what you hear in the game in the final mission is the actual first draft of that music. Thank God it worked well. As you could see, Pavel is is a very rigid and rigorous guy when he makes music. So that worked as it was. But it got in just as we were mixing it, so we didn't have a lot of time to iterate on it. And we can manage the conflicts within the music system, but it's not always seamless transition. As you can see, for example, with the vigilante systems, we still haven't found the perfect formula, but it's going to be a lot of fun, trying to refine that on different projects. But, we're happy with the balance we struck on this one. And a lot of needs for a project this size only materialize close to the end of the game. So you always have to keep that in mind and be reactive to what's going to happen later, and maybe try to keep a bit of buffer, whether it's budget or time, close to the end of the project to be sure that you're able to react to these things. If we can close on a light note, this is it for our presentation. But there's one thing we like to share. I've got a few Easter eggs here, but I'm just going to play one, which is my favorite one. During the course of the production, something got left on the cutting room floor, which involved a very thorough narrative aspect, which was, there's this cartoon playing in the world, and kids are really into it, and it's all about these Pokemon-like characters, and we really got carried away trying to imagine the theme song for that cartoon, which was really like this 80s song for an 80s cartoon with a bit of a Japanese flavor to it. So I'm going to play this song, and this didn't make it into the game, but what did make it is a small 3-second portion of that song, and I'm going to raise my hand when it plays, and that small portion is what we used as the news jingle for every news broadcast in the game. So you're going to hear it. That's the story behind that. That was played, sung, and performed on the team.
Forces of nature have fought each other since the dawn of time. But now, skilled trainers harness.
That was it. That was our news broadcast jingle right there. And all right, we're going to cut it short. That was a lot of fun. And who's singing right now is an AI programmer on Far Cry, actually. So we got to work with other teams as well. It's Raphael Parrain. We're really grateful he lent his voice to our little project. So that's about it for us. Thank you so much for coming to our presentation. We really appreciate you guys coming.